Welcome back to 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I am Jake Chipper, and on today's show, we have our first official reported NBA draft combine meeting for the Philadelphia 76ers, as it's been reported that the Sixers have met with Jeremiah Fears at the 2025 NBA Combine. So we're going to break down his game. What does this meeting actually mean? Do they have interest? And could Daryl Morey really consider drafting Jeremiah Fears at number 3 overall in the 2025 NBA draft in June? But before we get into that, speaking of the NBA draft, of course, with the third overall pick so big for this franchise, Daryl Morey cannot mess it up. So if you want the Sixers to absolutely crush the NBA draft, second round included as well, hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. So this report came in yesterday from Will Guillory, I believe is how you pronounce that name, covers the NBA and the NBA draft for The Athletic, boots on the ground at the combine. Talked to Jeremiah Fears, who listed the New Orleans Pelicans, Philadelphia 76ers, Dallas Mavericks, San Antonio Spurs, and Sacramento Kings as the teams he has met with so far at the combine. A guy who has been a quick riser and a late riser in this draft process, where he's getting top 5 buzz now. Now, Fears out of Oklahoma is a guard standing at just under 6'4" in shoes. I want to say this too. When I did the Ace Bailey video yesterday, when I list heights, I'm going to list their heights with shoes. All right. Everyone's getting so caught up in how tall these guys are with no shoes on. You play basketball with shoes on. So I'm going to talk about how tall these guys are with shoes. And Fears is just under 6'4", pretty slight at 180, but a 6'5" wingspan. One of the younger players in the class at about 18 and a half years old. He actually reclassified, similar to Cooper Flagg, so he could enter college a year early, thus entering the NBA draft a year early. That's why he is going to be one of the youngest players you'll see drafted in June. Now, the Sixers meeting with Jeremiah Fears. What does that really mean? Are they really considering taking him third overall? Look, it's tough to say. I'll say this. The Sixers are doing their due diligence. When you have a pick this high in the draft, you're not just going to say, oh, we got two guys here that we kind of like. That's it. No, they're going to look at all the other guys in that, 2 to 6, 7 range. Like they're going to look at a lot of different players to really get a deep dive into who they feel could be best on their team, not just from a skills perspective. You can watch their tape all you want, but, from a personal perspective. Could this guy fit our culture? Is he a leader? What kind of person is he? And Fears is talented enough where it's warranted to take a look at that about number 5 range is where he's projected to go right now with a player who's so young and so talented. So I don't think they'd really seriously consider taking him at 3, but I think it is smart and it makes sense to go along this route and do their due diligence. Now, when you take a look at Jeremiah Fears' physical profile and his physical comparison in NBA terms, this is not a skill set comparison. I'm not saying Jeremiah Fears plays similar, is going to be as good as Darius Garland is nowadays, but coming out of Vanderbilt, both very similar, both young players, around 6'3", Fears a little bit taller, both very slight. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about with Fears coming up here shortly. 6'5" wingspan, 6'2" standing reach. So not athletic freaks by any means with their builds or with their athleticism. But as we know, Darius Garland has been able to get it done at a very high level with the Cavs in the NBA. So we take a look at what Fears did in his lone season at Oklahoma, and pretty impressive, especially considering he got better as the season went along and had some of his best games against the best competition and was super clutch all year long. Over 17 points a game, 4 assists. You see the efficiency, obviously not great. And especially from 3, that's going to be a big concern for him and a big area of growth in this draft process and as he starts his NBA career. Now, where he really does excel right now as a player, driving, attacking the basket, and drawing fouls when he attacks a basket, very elite skill for him with his handle. He's a very dynamic ball handler who can break down the defense, can get his own shots, likes to attack the basket, and when he does get fouled, which he gets fouled a good amount, does knock down those free throws. He's great in the pick and roll. About half of his possessions are in the pick and roll as the lead ball handler, something that will translate to the NBA because the NBA does tend to be pretty pick and roll heavy. Also a good athlete. Not going to say he's a great athlete, but he's certainly not a poor athlete either. I think it is a plus to his game. Obviously, has his weaknesses as well. And perimeter shooting is definitely the biggest one and the biggest concern for me. Really just was not able to show a consistent shot. What definitely wasn't shy about getting his shots up, especially off the dribble. So like to see it's in there, and the shot actually does look pretty decent, but the results just simply were not there. He can be pretty erratic with his decision making. Again, he's very young, so this is expected for guys that are that young coming out of college. I mentioned Darius Garland earlier. This is actually an area of his game that he's very much improved since he was drafted. The shot selection, similar to Ace Bailey, how we talked about, can take some ill-advised shots here and there, but when you're the best player on your team, you're expected to be doing that thing from time to time. The strength, he definitely needs to put on weight. He's talked about it. Said he hopes to get up closer to 185 to 190 when he's in the NBA. Obviously at 180 right now. And the defense, not something that I think is ever going to come along for him. If you're drafting him, you're drafting him for what he can do offensively. Defensively is a negative, and I don't think he'll be much better than that in his NBA career. Taking a look at some of his advanced numbers here as you start to dive deeper into who he is as a player. A 31.5 usage percentage. That's basically how often the possession ended with him either shooting or an assist where the ball was really in his hands. 31.5% is absurd. Absurdly high, I should say, especially for a college freshman who reclassified. Rim field goal percentage, again, I said he likes to attack the rim a lot. He is a good driver. Now, 55.1% at the rim. You maybe like to see it be a little higher than that, but again, he is 6'3", 6'4", and he is slight, so he can struggle finishing through contact, but he does draw contact a lot. 5.4 free throws a game this past year at about 85%. So you like to see that he has that aspect of his game already under his belt. Now, where he does have to get better is that shooting. Off dribble twos, 16 to 40, 40%. He could get it done in the mid range, and I think that's another area of his game that would translate to the NBA level. Someone who's comfortable attacking off the dribble, breaking down the defense, or coming off a screen and pulling up in the mid range. But then you see off dribble threes, under 20% on the year. He took 46 of them, so he certainly was getting those shots up, and he's not afraid to let it fly. He has confidence, but the confidence hasn't translated into makes in his lone year at Oklahoma. But you do have some hope that that can get better, and we'll get into that here shortly. Even on catch and shoots, 31%, just a weakness. And if you're going to be a shorter guard at the NBA level who's not a really, really good defender, you'd like to see him develop that area of his game because that would take his offensive arsenal to a whole new level. And that's where you start to talk about some of the high-end comps that people are drawing up for him, like a Damian Lillard. But that is way, way out there. Not saying he's going to be Damian Lillard at all. Did participate in some shooting drills at the NBA Combine. People thought maybe he could use this as a way to help quiet down some of the concerns with his shot because there were times during the season where he could knock him down, but very few and far between. And at the Combine, again, he had that mid-range game from two, as I mentioned, showed that at the Combine, 19 to 30, 14 to 25. It's okay. 3-point star drill, 15 to 25. This is kind of a test of endurance as much as it is a test of shooting. They kind of run back and forth different spots around the 3-point line, kind of like in the shape of a star. That's why they call it the 3-point star drill. 15 to 25 and the 3-point side, 7 to 27. Just obviously not what you want to see when you're not really being guarded in game action, just wide open. How well can you shoot it? And he just didn't really perform all that well. So that's the biggest thing, holding Fears back right now. Again, he excels at creating shots. We talked about Ace Bailey, someone who isn't really great at creating space, creating separation, and getting his own shots, but he can rise up and hit it over anybody. Fears has that quickness. He has the ball handling ability to create open looks for himself and get his own shots, but he just has to knock them down at a higher level. That being said, as I mentioned, he does have confidence in his offensive game, and the form is promising. It's not like an ugly shot by any means, and he's a good free throw shooter. So when you talk about especially his pull-up game, that's something that a lot of people are talking about. Like, this could actually come along. Maybe it takes a year, 2 or 3, but he could be a way better shooter in the NBA than he was in college. Now, where he can excel in the NBA right from the jump, going to be able to run the pick and roll well, something he did well in college, and as his playmaking continues to develop, because he's a good playmaker right now, and he can find the open man, but not an exceptional playmaker, but he does a good job at that, as I mentioned, attacking the rim, getting to the mid-range, being a primary ball handler who can really create his own looks. Those kinds of offensive skills are very sought after when you think about guards in today's NBA. And as I mentioned, just simply not going to be a good defender with his frame and his inability to chase guys around screens. It's just really not an area that you project much growth for him. Didn't have a lot of production defensively either in terms of getting steals. Obviously, not going to be getting blocks, and just not somebody again that you're drafting for defense. You're drafting him for his offensive arsenal. So I don't think I'd like to pick at number 3. Now, I do want to read this note really quickly from my good friend, coworker Sam Brown, who is an Oklahoma fan. So watched obviously a bunch of their games this season, and he saw I was talking about Jeremiah Fears today. So I figured I'd ask him like, "Hey, how do you feel about Fears? Where is he at coming into the NBA?" And this is what he had to say. One of the best in the draft at creating his own shot, as we mentioned, athletic kid who reclassified like Flag and hasn't finished putting on mass yet. We talked about his size at 180 because he is so young, should be a finishing up his senior year in high school and we would be a freshman in college next year, still has plenty of time to grow and put on more muscle. Does struggle with physical defenders. His own defense might limit his ceiling, but I think the jump shot looks good and will pan out to where he'll be a consistent 20 plus point per game guy at minimum. That little part at the end there might be a little biased. I don't know if he'll be a consistent 20 plus point per game guy. Now, if the 3-point shot really does come along, then I could see that being the case. Also showed up in the clutch plenty of times. Games versus Michigan, UConn, Kentucky, high competition. He was very good, and he was very clutch all season long. When they needed a bucket down the stretch, or they just needed a good play down the stretch, it always seemed like he was showing up when the lights were the brightest. Again, I think that goes back to him always being confident in himself and his abilities. So obviously, you'd love to see that from a player as well. But as I briefly mentioned, I wouldn't really love the pick at number 3. I think there's better players. I think there's better fits. It's interesting because Fears, I think, in certain ways can kind of be compared to a Tyrese Maxey type. No, I don't think he has quite like the straight line speed and the quickness that Maxey had. But Maxey coming out wasn't a good shooter, right? It's why he fell all the way to the Sixers at what was that, like 16 around there. But over his first couple of years in the NBA, he was really able to develop that jump shot. So if Fears is able to do that, that's where you start seeing people saying he can be, that high end level all star type of point guard. If not, then what is really his ceiling if the shot doesn't come along? Kind of someone that can maybe run your second unit, attack the basket, but that's not somebody I want at number 3. But let me know. Just broke down Jeremiah Fears' game here on the channel. Let me know your opinions on him as a player, and would he be a good pick at number 3 overall? Just give me a G for good or a B for bad down in the comments section. Before we get up out of here, want to keep reminding you guys about the great deals on 76ers jerseys you can find over at Fanatics right now. If you go to chatsports.com/76jerseys. Now's actually the best time to get a jersey because you want to get them in early before the season starts to get closer and closer. And there's great deals happening right now. You can get 25 to 50+% off at Fanatics on a lot of these jerseys, whether you want current players, you want historical players, all different styles and designs, even way more than just what we're showing you here today, all different sizes as well. Go to chatsports.com/76jerseys. That link will be in the description, and I'll have it in the comment section as well of today's 76ers Now. All right, that'll do it. Appreciate you watching all the way up to this point. If you have, give me a real one, and be sure to subscribe with the NBA draft just over a month away, and then free agency coming up shortly after that. We will always have the best coverage right here on YouTube for your Philadelphia 76ers. So one more time, be sure to hit that sub button.